I'd like you first, please stand, share a prayer with me. Dear God, thank you for the time together. Thank you for providing this food, and thank you for all of those that have volunteered their time for a cause that is as great as you are, or we hope it to be. Please watch over our friends that are here and those that aren't able to be here, and continue to bless our great nation of the United States of America. In your son's name, amen. Stand and place our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, I hope that you came here for a good cause, because I know there's going to be one right now, and no one wants to hear from me. So without further ado, I'd like to invite up to Strongsville GOP stage for the second time, America's firebrand, the America First leader in Congress, none other than Congressman Matt Gaetz.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Your president could never make it off this stage. No way. Thank you for being the beating red heart of the Midwest right here in the Strongsville area in the great state of Ohio. You have got one of the very best members of the United States Congress, my mentor, Jim Jordan, that comes from the state of Ohio. And if you don't mind me saying so, you've got one of the best members of the United States Senate in J.D. Vance. Represent you. I was on the plane from Washington. Sherrod Brown was on the plane. He looked pretty nervous. Seemed as though I was more excited about coming and seeing the folks in Ohio maybe than he was, being in cycle in a time when I know the America First spirit is burning so hot in this great state. You are people who have always driven America to be the most productive and successful and optimistic and entrepreneurial versions of ourselves, and we want to get back to those winning days again. And that's what I'm fighting for each day in the United States Congress. So Shannon and I were speaking. He's a good friend of mine, and said, we'd love to have you back for either our Christmas party or our clam bake. And I'll be straight, I chose the clam bake initially. But our schedule didn't work out, and really I wanted to come to Ohio in the winter because I was wondering, as a Florida man, if there was anyone in this state in the winter. Because whenever I look out at the Florida beaches in November, December, and January, I see so many Big Ten sweatshirts. I feel as though about the whole region has come down to enjoy a little snowbirding. But I know the great work you're doing here is important, and you are leading the way in the Midwest, a region of the country where I sense our political realignment is really taking hold. I think more and more Americans are seeing that if you want to work hard and be successful, play by the rules, if you want to believe that your job is going to be expanding, not contracting, that your wages will be rising, that your money will go further, oftentimes it's the policies that we saw during the Trump era that animated that sense of enthusiasm, that business confidence and consumer confidence that led to better 401ks and better economic outlook. Today in America, you have to have $11,000 more each year just to maintain the same quality of life that you had 2 years ago. That's not the great American promise. And it's not happening just by happenstance, by some force in the universe that's taken over. I believe in our country right now we face a series of crises that require us all to work together to meet the moment. The first is the crisis on our southern border. I remember thinking back to the time when we lamented that during this administration there might be 4 million people that would come here without permission, that would come here without any sense of vetting or knowing that they were not going to do our fellow Americans harm. Now we look at those numbers, and it is 6, 8, potentially 9 million people coming into the country with no rhyme or reason and no orderly process. my friends, that amount of invitation of folks into the country is itself inflationary. It creates so much demand on resources and puts strain on social safety nets that we would intend for the vulnerable or the elderly or the sick in our country who would require some degree of compassion and care. The other crisis that we have is the spending in our country right now. We are 33, looking at $34 trillion in debt. If you started counting the day that Jesus was born, you would not yet be at 1 trillion today. But yet we are that many dollars in debt. And you might wonder, why is that the case? Why couldn't good people of both parties come together and see the threat that puts on our economic security and our national security? And unfortunately, we live in a construct in Washington now where no one is really responsible for the spending. We take one up or down vote each and every year on the funding of the entire government, all at once. Now, you wouldn't make that decision in your family. You wouldn't say, we have to spend $20,000 in the next 10 days or we'll have no food for the year, right? But that system has been designed to avoid the type of itemized review that would actually create downward pressure on spending where programs are not working or benefiting the American people. Now, why would that happen? Why would a serious group of adults in the most powerful and optimistic and prosperous nation in the world come together under that system? And I stand before you to tell you that it's because it's a corrupt system. Because far too often, what gets protected, what gets the lamb's blood on it during the budget process, that is based on what lobbyist or special interest group wants to spend money in a particular way, in a country far away, in a war that may or may not benefit you, in a cause that has not improved outcomes or quality of life for our fellow Americans. So they've devised that corrupt system. And my great frustration as a congressman is that far too many are not willing to stand up and fight against it and question it. And right now in this country, the only hope that tens of millions of Americans have is that the Republicans in the United States House of Representatives will stand up and fight and say no more. We are not going to continue to allow this system to be turned against our countrymen, to dilute what people have spent their entire time working for. And the third and final crisis that we face is that increasingly the government is not existing to see that your goals and dreams are fulfilled. The government has been turned against the wishes of the American people. Because in Washington, D.C., the way an agency grows its power is by helping its friends and hurting its enemies. And we would like to think that groups like the CDC or the FBI would be above that they would rise above the normal petty politics and power struggles. But unfortunately, some of the entities that we would want to hold in the most vaulted air disappoint us the most. I would think that seeing grandmothers beat up in the streets and political opponents targeted by prosecutors would be an observation we would make of the third world. But increasingly, that is what we see in the United States of America. And so I made the decision at the beginning of this Congress that we had to change the rules of the game, that we could not continue to just show up and send press releases and act as though we were doing the work of the people when we were still underwriting the debt of the corrupt Biden administration, when we were still spending money on stuff that didn't work, and while we were writing mean tweets and pounding our chest while people were coming into our country by the tens of thousands, by the hundreds of thousands, by the millions without consequence. And so we put together a different playbook for the United States Congress to act differently, to give people the will to stand and fight for the needs of their constituents. And unfortunately, Kevin McCarthy did not stay true to that commitment. And so I was going to stay true to mine. I would prefer to spend all of my time in Washington fighting against the craziest ideas of the Democrats. They've broken everything they touch. The border, the economy, gender. They broke gender. I didn't even know that was possible, but they did. But when Republicans don't keep their promises to Republican voters, then I will fight them too. I will be in the battle with you to ensure that we have some place to repose some hope and belief that things can be better. But do not despair, because I see the signs now in the House of Representatives, and I see them all over the world, frankly, that the positive, productive, economic nationalism is ascendant. We see it in Italy, we see it in Argentina, we see it increasingly in the Northern Triangle. We see in all of the surveys a realignment where more and more working people in this country are proud to align and associate with the Republicans that they believe will do battle for them. You are the epitome of that here in this club and among the activists who have ensured better outcomes in the great state of Ohio. And so here is my call to you. When we have the important battles against the surveillance state, to try to put downward pressure on spending, to have real consequences for people who have abandoned our sovereignty in the border, I need you to keep having my back. I need you to be the digital warriors who are sharing our message. I need you to really back the candidates who you see standing and fighting alongside of us. And we need your prayers, and we need every bit of effort that you have for this country. Because there is nowhere to go. There is nowhere to run should we fail. I love this land so much. I know that if we put the capability that all of us have together to win these elections, to get better people in the government, that we can turn this thing around. I saw a malaise over this nation during those Obama years when we never thought we could grow more or do more. And I saw Donald Trump put this economy on his back and will us into prosperity, and I know we can do it again. Thank you all so much for what you do for the America First movement. Thanks for what you do for your fellow Republicans. I will fight for you with everything I have. You have had my back, you have been in my corner, and I will always be in yours. I'm the only Republican in Congress who takes no lobbyist money, no special interest money. I work for you, not them. Let's go get them. Thank you all so much.